Daydream by A.S.J. Tessamond. One day people will touch and talk, perhaps easily, and loving be natural as breathing and warm as sunlight. And people will untie themselves as string is unknotted, unfold and yawn and stretch and spread their fingers, unfurl, uncurl like seaweed returned to the sea. And work will be simple and swift as a seagull flying, and play will be casual and quiet as a seagull settling. And the clocks will stop, and no one will wonder or care or notice, and people will smile without reason, even in winter, even in the rain. Come, let us worship together.
Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the gentle light to you. Moon and stars pour their healing light on you. Deep peace of the running way to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the gentle night to you. Moon and stars pour their healing light on you. Deep peace to you.
Olga will light our chalice this morning. You need to unmute yourself, Olga.
Blessed is the Fire by Eric A. Heller Wagner. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep, not quite. Okay. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life.
That fire that burns deep in the soul, some days it feels that there's a lot of wind trying to put that fire out. And sometimes the only way into deep peace is to wade through a storm. And so this morning, we felt it would be good to begin our service with an affirmation. Together we shall overcome all that this world is throwing at us. We shall overcome someday. Please sing along on mute as Olga plays for us. We are a gentle, angry people.
Olga, you're on mute. We need you to unmute yourself.
Olga, we can't hear you.
It tells me always, I thought it's, sorry, and I sang the whole verse for you guys.
Have to start over, Olga. Thanks.
For some reason, I unmute myself, but then unmute it again.
Right.
We are gentle and green people, and we sing for lives. We are gentle and green people, and we sing for lives. We are justice seeking people, and we singing for lives. We are justice seeking people, and we singing for lives. We are young and old together, and we're singing for lives. We are young and old together, and we're singing for lives. We all land of many colors, and we're singing for lives. We all land of many colors, and we're singing for lives. We are gay and straight together, and we're singing for lives. We are gay and straight together, and we're singing for lives. We are gentle, loving people, and we're singing for lives. We are gentle, loving people, and we're singing for lives.
And now a story, Babies in the River. Once upon a time, there was a small village on the edge of a river. Life in the village was busy. There were people growing food and people teaching the children to make blankets and people making meals. One day, a villager took a break from harvesting food and noticed a baby floating down the river toward the village. She couldn't believe her eyes. She heard crying in the distance and looked downstream to see that two babies had already floated by the village. She looked around at the other villagers working nearby. "Does anyone else see that baby?" she asked. One villager heard the woman but continued working. "Yes," yelled a man who'd been making soup. "Oh, this is terrible," a woman who'd been building a campfire shouted. "Look, there are even more upstream." Indeed, there were 3 more babies coming around the bend. "How long have these babies been floating by?" asked another villager. No one knew for sure, but some people thought they might have seen something in the river earlier. They were busy at the time and did not have time to investigate. The villagers quickly organized themselves to rescue the babies. Watchtowers were built on both sides of the shore, and swimmers were coordinated to maintain shifts of rescue teams that maintained 24-hour surveillance of the river. Zip lines with baskets attached were stretched across the river to get even more babies to safety quickly. The number of babies floating down the river only seemed to increase. The villagers built orphanages, and they taught even more children to make blankets, and they increased the amount of food they grew to keep the babies housed, warm, and fed. Life in the village carried on. Then one day at a meeting of the village council, a villager asked, "But where are all these babies coming from?" "No one knows," said another villager. "But I say we organize a team to go upstream and find out who is throwing these babies in the river." Not everyone was in agreement. "But we need people to help pull the babies out of the river," said one villager. "That's right," said another. "And who will there be here to cook for them and look after them if we send a bunch of people upstream?" The council chose to let the village decide. I wonder if you were one of the villagers. What would your vote be? Some people see injustice but ignore it, thinking it is not their problem or that someone else will handle it. Others see terrible things happening and they organize to help the people affected. Still others are like the villager who decides to head upstream. They want to stop the babies from getting in the river in the first place. Our story tells us that we need both the people to provide services to fulfill needs, and we need justice makers who work to make sure all people have equal access to the resources that they need to fill their needs. We need many people working together and working separately to bring about true change in the world. Let us be those gentle, loving people.
Will you join me in the spirit of prayer this morning? Spirit of life, how grateful we are for the love and care that we find here in community. Please help us shoulder the burden of citizenship in these perilous times. Help us reach out to those in need of food, shelter, medical care. Let us realize that we are indeed our siblings' keeper, that the well-being of each other being is inextricably linked to our own. Help us as we seek to find the one little thing each day that we can do to bless the world. Help us hold each other as we mourn, as we struggle, as we hurt. We can't fix everything, but we can surely help one another get through this life. How grateful we are for each other and all of the good people in our lives. Blessed be, and amen. With renewed determination to hold all people in love, let us sing together, Draw the Circle Wide.
Draw the circle
painting by Margaret Weiss called "The Church Has Left the Building." Anyone who has seen the old Frasier sitcom will recognize the phrase "left the building." Margaret Weiss says, "The church is not a place, it is a people. The church is not only a steeple above the tree-lined streets and cars, rather it's a people proclaiming to the world that we are here for the work of healing and of justice. The church is not walls built stone upon stone, held together by mortar, but rather person, linked with person, linked with person. All ages and genders and abilities, a community built on the foundation of reason, faith, and love. The church is not just a set of doors open on Sunday morning, but the commitment, day after day and moment after moment, of our hearts creaking open the doors of welcome to the possibility of new experience and radical welcome. The church is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. The church is the gathering together of all the people and experiences and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts. Gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache and pick up hope and love. For the church is us, each and every one of us together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it.
Sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your might. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring you song of love and rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your might. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that rose in the winter time. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your might. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your might. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and rose in the winter time. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Thank you, Olga and Olga and Olga and the COVID-19 First Parish Choir. I'll give you hope when hope is hard to find. Hope is and will continue to be the antidote and antithesis to existential despair. Martin Luther King Jr. intimated in his sermon the meaning of hope, that hope is the refusal to give up despite overwhelming odds. Hope, connection, meaning, these are the reasons people are drawn to church, especially when our lives become difficult. We need each other. We need to make sense of the world. We need help in order to refuse to give up, especially when the number of babies coming down that river becomes appalling to contemplate and exhausting or impossible to try to keep up with. It's hard to pause and ask why. Why are these babies ending up in the river? Didn't we pass a law that prohibits throwing them in? Didn't we build a fence, a nice strong wall so people can't get near the river? And look, more and more lives in mortal peril. Our survival as a church, as a nation, as a species may well depend upon our ability and willingness to pause in our efforts to fix things. And realize that while important and even necessary, those efforts have not been making things appreciably better. Still babies in the river. Still more babies in the river. What does it look like to go upriver and find out how those babies are getting in the water? It takes true humility and the ability to acknowledge that perhaps what we have always believed would fix things may not be what is really needed, or at least all that is really needed. It takes commitment to finding out and working together toward a solution. This kind of honest, realistic thinking is hard. And while we are by no means perfect at it, Unitarian Universalists have long been committed to its practice. We're known for being on the forefront of change, from civil rights to gay rights and beyond. Recognizing the worth of science and democratic self-governance as integral parts of our spiritual journey through life. Willing to reassess, to change our minds, to expand our understanding, to be a truly living tradition. Our moral compass is our 7 principles. Taken together, you could say these principles spell out guidelines for making our way through the world faithfully and with integrity. We value the worth of all people. We therefore believe in treating everyone with justice, equity, and compassion. We accept and support each other in our spiritual growth and our search for truth and meaning. We govern ourselves democratically, which we'll be doing at the annual meeting in about an hour, according to our consciences, and we understand ourselves as part of a world community and the interconnected web of all existence. And as happens in a living tradition, many Unitarian Universalists have looked at all the babies in the water, the people and causes we care so much about, and have recognized that it would be good if we could all work together to find out why that keeps happening and what we might collectively do to help it stop happening. So at this year's GA, They are proposing an 8th principle. It reads like this: we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Or, in the language of Ashley Woodward Henderson, the co-director of the Highland Center in Tennessee, sweet dreams of revolutionary change, a world where everyone has what they need and no harm exists for any of us. That's what we need right now. That's the kind of world I want to be building. That's the kind of world I want to live in, where everyone has what they need, not just to survive, but to thrive, and no systemic harm exists for anyone. This is what I want to be known for. Someone who refuses to give up despite overwhelming odds, refuses to give up working toward a world I want to live in, a world of love whose systems are geared to reducing harm, a system that works for all of us so that we all can thrive. One way to begin to look upstream and see what's really happening to all those babies is to learn more about the systems of racism and power. These are systems that hurt and oppress us all. For those with the time and inclination, Side with Love and Love Resists is sponsoring that online series I mentioned at the beginning of the service. Participants will explore the history of the Reconstruction era to give us a deep understanding, deeper, post-Civil War, to give us a deeper understanding of the origin of today's systemic racism in policing and mass incarceration, as well as the Black-led movements resisting it. In this pivotal protest moment sparked by the law enforcement-linked murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and Tony McDade, only the most recent Black lives to be lost to police violence, we'll learn from the past to be ready for today and to build toward the world we dream of. I signed up for this series. Maybe I'll see some of you there. Again, details are in Friday's perspective. In the words of Barack Obama, when you listen to the truth that's inside yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, you'll be part of the solution, not the problem. May we listen to the truth, even when it's hard. May we be known as people who love the world enough to do the hard stuff. May it be so. Olga will extinguish our chalice.
As Breath to Song by Becky Laurent. As flame is to spirit, so spirit is to breath, and breath to song. Though we extinguish the flame in the sanctuary, may we tend it in our hearts until we meet again.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
Thank you for joining us in worship today.